everyone. It's Passion's Cooking. Anita Heidemann, Dario Tomaselli, and we have James Treadwell here. Hello, James.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks so much for joining us. You know, we're talking a lot about buying local, farm to table, and now we're doing this series on wine. So we thought, wonderful idea to have you to promote your incredible restaurant down in Niagara, Treadwell, but also you're a sommelier. So there's so much more to what you do down there, and we can talk a bit about wine. Go into the series with the people in our International Dinner Club so that they can get a bit more experience on wine and some of the local things we have as well.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, James Treadwell, I mean, it's a special thing for me. I mean, James is it's a very important part of my personal life and our life. I remember James when I was a young boy and, very good friends of his father, Stephen Treadwell, and his mom, Susan, but always a lot of respect for the Treadwell family way of thinking, their culture. I always say to everyone, if you go to Niagara, it's a must place to go, Treadwell, because one of the first restaurants really start the movement of farm to table, really supporting the farmers around and really pushing to the next level. And of course, with James and his passion for wine, that really kind of married the two things, the food and wine of Ontario and Niagara, obviously bringing some good wine from outside, but really give a full experience of what Niagara and what Treadwell has to offer. So obviously, I'm really happy to see him, much grown than the first time I knew him. But I'm going to leave it up to James to really tell us a little bit about Treadwell, and then we're going to get into the world of wine and experience of wine.
Yeah, well, thank you, Dario. Thank you, Anita. I am a sommelier. I'm a restaurant owner too. My educational background's a little bit different. I went to school for political science, what seems like a long time ago, and I think it was. Went to school in Ottawa, but during my last years of school, I wanted to be a sommelier. I say this kind of half joking. I wanted to do that because I thought girls would like me more. I more and more about wine. And
Did it work?
I met my wife this way, so maybe it actually worked. It took a while, but so I got my sommelier certification. And the thing is, when you get your certification in something, hopefully people don't think, okay, I know everything now. The thing with wine is you can never know enough. The day that you think you know too much about wine is the day you got to kind of step back and say, oh, you know what, I don't think this is the industry for me. And the one thing I always wanted to do, even before I became a sommelier, was I wanted to travel. And I told myself that after I would finish university, I would go over, whether it be to Europe, I have family there, or elsewhere, and travel for a year. But I used that sommelier certification in my history of working in my dad's restaurants before then to work, I worked at the time in England at this wonderful, magical place in the South Coast called Chewton Glen, which is where my father worked when he was my age. And I used that, to work and to make some money. And then I would spend whatever time I had outside of work traveling on the continent to learn more and more about wine. So I was able to achieve the goal of traveling, but also to achieve more knowledge coming in when it came to this industry, this idea of wine that I found more and more interesting and more curious about. So, having the opportunity to go and travel around Champagne and around the Mosel Valley in Germany and in Austria as well was an incredibly amazing experience. And then obviously from a hospitality perspective, learning more and more about that, working at this incredible Relais and Chateau Michelin star restaurant at the same time was great. And I got a call from my parents to say that they had found a restaurant.
Come home.
Sorry, go ahead.
They said, come home.
Yeah, I got the call to come home, and I have no regrets. I do miss, obviously, traveling around Europe, and I still do. But it was quite an experience working in England at the time. I mean, it was pre-recession. People literally were spending money like they thought it grew on trees. And as a young sommelier, that was incredible. You walk to work and thinking, what am I going to be opening today? Am I going to be opening, some incredible, Burgundy and Bordeaux? Am I going to be opening some amazing prestige cuvee champagne, older port? So as a young sommelier who admitted that he didn't know everything, it was great. I had the luxury of learning, having that on-site kind of experience of learning and finding out what this industry was about, not only with wine but also in terms of restaurants, head on, and it was great. It really helped me define who I am today, not only on a professional level but also on a personal level too. So came back to Canada, and we opened up Treadwell Farm to Table Cuisine in this little lakefront community called Port Dalhousie in the north end of St. Catharines. And, we did some amazing things. We were a small business. We didn't have many employees, but, we certainly had a vision of not only what we would do with food, but also with hospitality. And our big thing was supporting local suppliers, not only on the food side, but also on the winery side too. And, it's something where we immediately, through the hard work of our staff, and also a little bit of luck too. I mean, we got some incredible responses from our guests, and 14, 15 years later, here we are. We're now in Niagara on the Lake. We moved to Niagara on the Lake in 2013. And we not only have Treadwell restaurant, but we also have our bakery, our catering operation. And then recently we took over one of the oldest buildings in Niagara on the Lake called the Gatehouse, which dates back to the 1700s. And our idea is to eventually turn that into a event venue with hotel rooms above. So we're very, very excited to be part of that project. And it's a hard industry. It's true what they say. The restaurant industry is incredibly hard, but it's an incredibly rewarding industry too. And the fact that I've been able to do this, working with my family, there are good days. There are obviously not so good days, like any family business, but it has been incredibly rewarding. And I'm grateful for their support. I'm grateful for the hard work of our staff up to this point. So.
I think it's wonderful because you have many different areas of experience and you can offer the experience for people. So with the bakery, you can be able to give high quality food there. With the restaurant, I mean, it's a great experience to be able to go there. And the Gatehouse with the catering now, you've got a much larger facility. And Dario worked there many years ago at the Gatehouse.
Many years ago.
So, I mean, it shows how old you are, dear.
I think also what amazed me, and the experience of Treadwell, going from a restaurant to a wedding, because obviously you guys do an incredible amount of events, weddings. 20 or 30 weddings a summer sometimes you do, but you can almost see no difference if you have an experience at Treadwell or you have a catering experience by Treadwell in food, or whatever you do. I know because I've seen it, a couple of times, I went to help Steve and for one, and there is really, the focus of the family and the company to really focus on quality.
And local quality.
And local quality. But you're saying fortune. I said, yeah, but fortune is built with our work. And that's something that your family has not backed up. Work always very hard, always trying to really improve day by day. And the fruit of success are there right now. Now you guys taking over the Gatehouse and the facility and the events, and you guys are able to do. I think it's been great for producer and farmer on the food side, but thanks to you, James, now it's been a great support for all the winemakers and winery around the country, especially around the peninsula and Ontario.
Yeah, well, thank you. I think I now and again, especially over the last 8 weeks of being closed because of the COVID-19 crisis, you often kind of take a stroll down memory lane. And I do remember when I first came back from Europe and we opened Treadwell, and we didn't have a huge budget, a huge wine budget. But I had made the decision to be like, you know what, the kitchen is obviously going to be highlighting these incredible local ingredients. We as a wine program have to follow suit. You go to an Italian restaurant, but they serve French wines. I mean, French wines might be the craze. I'm just saying in hypotheticals right now. But, I've always learned that a great wine program follows the lead of the kitchen. And if we're promoting all these local wines, or local ingredients rather, wouldn't it be amazing if we promote these local wines? And we'll still have international wines. We'll use those as kind of benchmarks or perspectives to compare local wines to. And when we first opened, the response to Ontario wines isn't as strong as it is today, or wasn't as strong as it is today. But it certainly it opened up people's eyes to what we're doing here in Ontario, and specifically, we're trying to focus in on small producers. I mean, nothing against those larger producers, but you could find those elsewhere. You can find it at the LCBO, maybe you can find it at other restaurants. But we really took a lot of pride in showcasing a lot of those smaller producers. Again, if you look at the kitchen's philosophies, they were, getting it from really small, suppliers. I remember on the back of our menu, we, like a lot of European restaurants, would list our suppliers. There was one individual, an old gentleman that lived in town called Frank Starosco, and he would grow, if I remember correctly, he grew basil for the restaurant and these incredible raspberries. I mean, it was only a small season, but we listed his name on the back. And he would drive up in his Cadillac, and he had his bushels of raspberries, and it was fun. Like, it's not that it's not fun now, obviously, but that's really what it should be about. It should be about really exploring the local area from an ingredient perspective, but also from a wine list perspective too. And we were introducing guests for the first time to these small wineries that they'd never even heard of, that only produced a small amount of wines, and they were doing a great job. And half the battle is really building that relationship with the guest to say, hey, listen, like, I am not here to screw you. Like, I am here to make sure that you have a great experience. Can you trust me, right? If you can just give me some information of the type of experience that you're looking at. And that's the way that, any good sommelier should be approaching, their guest and leading their experience. And, the one thing that we struggle with down here are heavier reds. I think it's well documented. And it's not that we don't make great Cabernet Sauvignon. We don't make great Merlot. We do, but we don't do it consistently, in my opinion. And so if you're coming to Treadwell restaurant saying, I'm only going to drink Ontario wines, but I want to drink Napa Cabernet, like, I want that type of experience. Okay, that's something I can't do, right? I just can't. Perhaps there might be an obscure bottle that maybe has some textural richness that is reminiscent of Napa Cab, but I can't, replicate that experience. So it's always good to have international bottles too, because I don't want the guest experience to be sacrificed because we're only sticking to this one idea. Ontario wines will always be the core kind of philosophy or the core principle of the Treadwell wine experience. But at the end of the day, we're in the hospitality business. I want to make sure that your experience is not lessened. So if you only drink French wines, or you only like Australian Shiraz, or you only drink champagne, which is amazing, then that's fine. We will make sure that you can have that experience. I'm not here to change you. If that's the way that you have your experience, or you want your experience, then absolutely. It is my job as a restaurateur and my job as a sommelier to make sure I give you that experience. However, if you are curious, and Anita, I know you've told me several times about the experience that you've had at Treadwell in the past with, having red wine with fish. If you're willing to, be curious and try these different things, then that's where a sommelier really, really, is quite an incredible thing, because we're there to really kind of introduce you to new things, that kind of Sherpa mentality. Follow me and I will guide you to the experience that you're looking for.
would never forget that experience. I mean, you get,
Well, it was, the fish was presented because that's what I wanted. And then of course I went with the wine recommendation, which was a red wine. And I remember looking at it and I actually, I smelled the wine, did all the thing, checked its legs, and I'm like, I don't think I'm going to like this wine. It had a very, I want to say musty, kind of a smell to it. It was, you'd have the right terminology for it. I'm far from a wine expert, but I thought, I don't think I'm going to like this wine. But when I had it with the fish, it was unbelievable. And that's why I think it's so important to have a sommelier to work those experiences, because you open yourself up to so much more that you would normally not do. But I have one question for you, and I know this is something that Dario did with Oro when you were running the restaurant, was they would make meals to the wine.
Yeah.
So let's say that someone came in and they wanted to use a local wine. Could they call you in advance? I'm just throwing this out there. I didn't even ask you ahead of time. Sorry about that, James.
No, it's okay.
Come in advance and say, you know what, I really want to try this Stratus wine.
Mm-hmm.
What would you recommend with this? Could you give me experience to that? And Dario says it's much easier to make the food to the wine than the wine to the food. So I'm just kind of curious your thoughts on that.
No, we absolutely would do that. I mean, if we take a step back, restaurants are there to provide the experience. We are in the guest service business. Like we need to make sure that guests have a great experience. And sure, the person who is having a business dinner is going to want a completely different experience than the couple having a romantic dinner 2 or 3 tables down. If a guest comes into the restaurant and says, listen, I had this incredible wine, or I want to have this wine from your list, but I want to have the full Monty. I want to make sure that, the dish, a dish rather, is created for that type of wine. We have absolutely no issues in doing that, because at the end of the day, I mean, we're only as good as the experience that we provide. And I know some restaurants maybe don't have that type of flexibility, but perhaps we're a little bit more old school in the way that we approach hospitality, that like, sure, I mean, absolutely. If we have the ingredients, like, we're not going to make you a pizza, right, at Treadwell, but if we have the ingredients to make something that will increase the experience for you and your guests, then of course, we're going to absolutely do that. Now, what we'll often do at Treadwell, especially in the wintertime when we're a little bit quieter, is we'll hold a series of wine dinners where what we'll do is we'll partner with some of the more interesting, smaller wineries in the area. And there's only a couple that we offer a year, but it gives our guests an opportunity to meet the people behind the experience and try some of their wines, not only from their current portfolio, but also maybe from library bottles, or maybe even wines that are coming up. And but we'll often kind of get a lineup of the wines that they wish to showcase, and then that will define the menu that we'll offer that day. Because at the end of the day, those guests, as much as they want an incredible meal, they are there for these incredible wines. That is the star of the show. So we will define, or we will create the menu experience based on those wines. So I know that's kind of like the long-winded answer to your question, but I mean, whether it's Oro or Treadwell or any restaurant, any good restaurant, I think that they would probably do that. I can't see why they wouldn't, as long as you have the ingredients. It's no different than modifying a meal because of a dietary restriction or an allergy. I know that there's a lot of ego in the restaurant industry, and that's very unfortunate. People are proud of what they do. It's a very tough industry, but at the end of the day, we are in the guest service business. And if a guest wants you, or is requested to have a modification done to better their experience because of the wine, then why would we ever stand in the way of that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think, and personally, obviously, as a chef, I found then I became more knowledgeable about wine, because you want to partner with a really good sommelier, and you say, then he tells you, this is the body of this wine, this is the fruit content, this is what you have, smell it, understand it, then you can build a dish. I think you become a better cook. You have a better understanding of palates. You become in a better understanding of combination, and this is something that I learned by doing that. And in the beginning, it says, why do we need to pair the wine with the food. Why don't we do the other way around?
Mhm.
I mean, here's the wine that is recommended, and then let's figure out what kind of food we can pair with.
I mean, and at the end of the day, I, I can only go on my experience. It's completely subjective,
Yeah.
right? That, okay, maybe that very, very delicate white fish, maybe that won't go well with cab. But at the same time, too, if you're a fan of really, heavy, full-bodied wines, if that's what you want, then absolutely, we'll give it to you. I'm not going to change the way that you look at wine and food pairing if you don't want to change the way that you look at food and wine pairing. That's not my role. It's only when you're willing to take that step that's where I'll take your hand and we'll guide you that way. But there's some ingredients that are definitely more versatile than others. You think of some Mediterranean cuisine, right, where you start incorporating peppers and olives and different herbs and everything else like that. That kind of opens up the opportunity where it's like, okay, you know what, you can go to maybe more textured whites, but you can also go to reds as well, to really kind of accentuate a lot of that kind of briny, oily character of the olives, or more of those kind of roasted sweet notes of the peppers. So, you as a sommelier, you do obviously have to have a more than a basic understanding of the menu. You need to know that menu inside and out. You also have to understand the people that you're working with too. Is the chef willing to make that? I mean, in our case, they absolutely are, but you need to know a lot of different things about the team that you work with, the menu you work with, but you also need to know a lot about food too, because if somebody's like, hey, listen, I don't know what this is, or I had this somewhere else, in a way we're there. Like, we can have a conversation that's not even about the restaurant. We can talk about other things too. You need to have a basic understanding about that. So if they've had a dish at some place in Europe when on their recent trip, you can certainly build a strong relationship with that person if maybe you've been to that place, or maybe you know exactly the type of ingredients or the wines that they've been talking that they're discussing. And I guess in the end of the day, like a sommelier it's all about relationships, and it's all about building that trust amongst you and the guest to go that next step, because there's so many great things about wine, and there's so many great wines out there. I really truly say, like, I mean what I'm about to say. There has never been a better time to drink wine in Ontario than there is now. Like, there really isn't. It's something where the quality, the amount of wines and the amount of consistently great wines that are available in Ontario has never been better. It really, truly is that way. But you're also seeing wines at all different price points. I mean, you can get some incredible wines for under $20. You can get some incredible wines at that mid-tier between $21 and $30, and you can get more of those premium wines too. But for the longest time, Ontario always had this reputation where it's like, you can't get that wine, you can't get this wine, they only bring in these wines. That's not the case anymore. I think that, and that's really kind of, I gotta, tip my hat to the consumer base that has expendable income, but also is very, very curious about what's going on. So importers now are like, sure, I'll bring in some orange wines from Slovenia, or I'll bring in some really, really, crazy reds from these obscure regions around Spain and Portugal. And it's great to see. And if you only like California Cabernet, that's cool. You're drinking wine. That, like, I can't judge you on that. If that's what you're looking for, then you know what? That's fantastic, right? But if you're willing to kind of open up, your mind to different opportunities out there and different wines, it's an incredibly rewarding market right now to see what's out there and really learn a lot about wine through tasting.
Yeah. Did you say orange wine from Slovenia?
Yeah, so one of the more interesting categories out there right now, it's a niche, is orange wines, and we make orange wines here in Ontario. It's a very, very small amount of orange wines, but you're seeing a lot of orange wines coming out right now from Italy, Slovenia, Spain, France. There's a lot of them around Europe right now, and it is a popular category. I don't think it's a big category. It's not like New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc, or it's not sparkling wine. It's only a small one, but it's one that the people that drink orange wines, they're very curious about it, right? They're very unique. It's not for everyone. It's almost like the sweetened iced tea versus the non-sweetened iced tea. Orange wines can be astringent. They can be oxidative, but they're unique. And from a food and wine pairing perspective, they offer some of the most versatility when it comes to food and wine pairing. Orange wines are not from oranges. I should put it out like that. And I remember when I first heard orange wine.
From oranges.
Are they making it from like Seville oranges or something? Like, no, like orange wines are not from oranges. They are made from white grapes. A lot of them, a lot of the better ones are made from indigenous grapes from around, again, Slovenia, Italy, France, Spain, those kind of areas. But they're very intriguing. Are they my favorite? No. But I do respect that category because they are very unique and they do offer some really, really interesting food and wine combinations.
Yeah, that's great. So I think that there's a lot of people out there that possibly don't even know where to start. And I find that the best thing is to even come up with get some kind of a book. And every time you go out, write your thoughts on what that experience is, because there's so many different kinds of wines out there. You've got high end, you get low end. How do you know what quality is? And then how do you know what quality is to you? So I'm just going to leave this one last question until we get into the next segment to lead into more about learning about wines. But what do you think is the most important thing to understand what a quality wine is, and how do you know what that would be?
Oh, that's hard because everybody has different expectations, right? What I think is a great wine is completely different from even another sommelier, right? Let alone somebody that's getting into wine for the first time. I think wine should provide you a pleasure. It should tell a story. It's a very, very unique thing. It's almost like a great quality ingredient. What is it that ingredient, or what separates that ingredient from another ingredient? And whether it's a $12 bottle of Spanish wine or whether it's a $1,000 bottle of Burgundy, right? It should tell a story. And it should provide you a pleasure, I think, more than anything else. Now, because not everybody, but a lot of us do travel, perhaps there is like a sentimental reason to it. Maybe it provides you with an incredible memory. Maybe you went to go and see the winery. Maybe that was a wine that you had on your first date with your partner. It should tell you a story, or should at least kind of invoke memories of an experience that, ties into that. And so, what makes wines great? I guess, does it provide you with pleasure? Does it, are you happy when you drink it? Does it go great with that food? I mean, maybe that's taking a little bit too far, but I think more than anything else, it should just provide you with pleasure. And if you get that from a $12 bottle of wine or a whatever, that's fine. That's great. At the end of the day, I mean, the world is a pretty negative place right now, right? So if hopefully something like wine gives you pleasure, where you're able to kind of take your mind off the negativity that's happening around us.
Yeah. I think that we should actually do something and come down to Niagara, because I think going to the different wineries and having you to sort of work us through and bring a group down there and maybe do a little cooking class and then go to Treadwell afterwards. I know for me, an experience was going down to Niagara and going to all the different wineries and really understanding and writing down what that experience was and what that memory was and how I felt when I drank that. I got a better understanding of the different types of wines. And of course, that's only one region. There was other places we've been to, but I think that might be something that we might want to consider, right?
I think also is important, when you say it's really understanding what your palate really accepts, and it's what it's all about. I mean, a lot of people say, oh, I want to have that wine because sounds good. How many times I hear that? Sounds good. Well,
I like the label sometimes.
And that's cool. Like that's fine. Like, you know what? The label is something that it's almost like it seduces you, entices you to have that, and that's fine. Like, but you're right, Dario, about your palate. And everybody's palate changes as they age, right? I mean, whether if you're an individual that does this for a living, or whether you're just somebody that likes wine, what you liked 20 years ago is probably not the same as what you like now. It's something where, your palate is always evolving. And you see that too, not only with wine, but you see that with food. Like, people tend to be a little bit more tolerant or a little bit more sensitive towards salt or sugar, or heat.
Tannins.
It's the same thing too with wine, is that, perhaps, that off-dry Riesling that you liked when you first got into wine is not your cup of tea anymore. Maybe you prefer more dry wines, or maybe you prefer reds, where before you were enjoying whites. So, and I find that really interesting, is that, that's, your palate is always changing. It's an incredibly amazing thing. It's inevitable. Your palate changes, like your body. And if you're willing to look at wine in that scope, wine provides you with many different options to fulfill your preferences. So
I think it's also being present too, because sometimes people will just drink the wine and they're not even thinking. It's just the bringing it up to their mouth. But being present, understanding how it hits the tongue and what it does, and how you said, like, it's the memory and the feeling and to what that is. A lot of people, they don't necessarily do that. So I think that's another thing, is to sit down and really be present.
In your mood. I mean, your
that's true too.
your mood really affects the way your wine is. And you made a really good point, because, if it depends on what kind of mood you are. If you really just want to drink some wine, and you really want to pair, or you just want to relax and have a specific wine.
I mean, at the end of the day, a wine is a beverage. Like,
it is.
But putting it down to its simplest level, like, wine is an alcoholic beverage, no different than vodka or beer or anything else, right? But, when it comes to your mood, like, you've had a hard day, like, drinking a glass of wine makes you feel better. Like, that's a great thing with wine. Like, hopefully it makes you feel good, right? And especially in times like this, where, you turn on the television and it's all negativity, and there's all these horrible things that are going on in the world. And it's like, okay, like, I don't want to say, because it's going to sound like I'm an alcoholic, like, it provides you an outlet, but it does. Like, it provides you with an outlet to change. It takes your minds off things. It makes you realize that I don't want to say it simplifies everything for you, but it just makes you feel happy. And again, whether that's like an $8 bottle of wine or an $80 bottle of wine, as long as it makes you happy, right? Then that's great. Like, that's in its simplest form, but it does make you happy. And we have to approach wine that way, that, it's, yes, okay, if you consume a lot of it, it can be dangerous, but at the end of the day, if you have 1 or 2 glasses of wine, it makes you a happier, healthier person. It takes, it de-stresses you. It makes you relax. It makes you more comfortable. And that's what we should all be doing.
Well, there is a healthy component to wine and red wine. So that's why I enjoy it. Only the health reasons. But thank you, James. Pardon?
Of course. No, I mean, and that's, like, I was saying that kind of jokingly, but yeah, like, if you enjoy drinking a glass of champagne, like, I remember being British, you kind of follow what's happening, in England, and with the Queen's birthday that just recently came up. And I think it was her cousin that was saying about her day-to-day life and how much alcohol is involved in that. And it's not like she's like, the Queen's not on a bender or anything like that, but she has a gin and tonic before lunch, and she has a glass of champagne before she goes to bed, and she's 94 years old, and that's awesome. Like, that's great. If obviously, it's, she, at her age, it's made her happy, it's made her who she is, among other things. But, like, yeah, if you want a glass of champagne every day, if you can afford it, go ahead. Like, if it makes you happy, that's great.
That's something that he's going to bring to the next topic, because it's something that I want to tell you about. It's something that he's going to go in the next segment.
Okay. Well, because we're going to cut this one off. We're going to go into the next one. We're going to talk more about the sommelier life, food and wine, and all the details around it. So thanks so much, James.
Wonderful, James Treadwell. Thank you.
My pleasure, guys.